We have dry rot in both the main beams, and they also affect the end. So we're afraid to run it. Now, if you were running the car, the end fell off, that would be very embarrassing. So we don't run it. But it's operable. If I put the trolley pole up, this would run. In fact, it ran into the barn under its own power. But that was many years ago.
Now, what's the story on 503?
503, we got the body from a Boy Scout group, put standard gauge trucks under it, ran it until 1993 at Glenwood, and decided we better not run it anymore. This is from Blackpool, England. Blackpool, England was the only town in Great Britain that kept their trams. And they evolved into what they call a Blackpool standard. This is a Blackpool standard. Started out with an open upper deck. Then they enclosed part of the upper deck. Then they enclosed most of the upper deck. Then they enclosed everything in steps like that. And this ran in Lake Oswego, and Harold Townsend was one of our members and did a painting that he entered into a contest in Lake Oswego. So guess who owns the painting? Lake Oswego. In order to get in the contest, he had to sign his rights away. But I think when we leave, maybe it'll be liberated. Harold was running the car one day, and a little boy ran down beside him and yelled, "There's a big bug up there!" And Harold didn't take his eyes off the road. He just kept, "Yes, does he have a ticket?" A very broad sense of humor. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of technology. This thing is a trolley catcher. When the trolley is running, this is attached to the end of the trolley pole. If the trolley pole pops off the wire, it's spring-loaded, so it goes up real fast. And this device senses that and pulls it down away from the overhead so it doesn't bounce on stuff. The problem with this is this car was a one-pole car. So when you got to the end of the line, you had to come over here and you had to flip this thing up, turn it, pull it out, and walk around to the end of the line with this thing.
Oh, okay. So this whole mechanism comes out of here.
Yes. And we still have a car over the last car over on the other side, and I'll show you. We have the same. We have to still have to do this. Hi, Fish. It was just so much trouble. Now, come on around here a second. I want to show you something. This is why we came here. I went to run cars at Glenwood. Glenwood was our old museum. If you go out to Tillamook, you take Route 26 and then Route 6. On Route 6, part way out, was our museum. And I went out to run cars one Saturday morning. There was a big hole in here, and somebody taking a can of purple paint and just tossed it. Oh, wow. So you know there weren't two nice people out there. So we moved here. Oh, by the way, there are some nice people. This thing is a sign. It's a neon sign that says, I think it says Red Electric Cafe. Somebody saw that. The guy was going out of business and said, "Donate that to the trolley museum." Sure. And so I don't know what we're going to do with that.
You could start a cafe and call it the Red Electric Cafe.
Yeah. If I could find a place on the grounds to call it the Red Electric Cafe. Anyhow, and guess what? One of our little elves broke the neon on this side, so it has to be repaired before we could use it. But it's still probably works. Now this is one of 6 cars that was made in the company shop, I think about 1908. And they called it, let's see, Portland Railway Light and Power, something like that. They kept changing the names, and they all had train doors in the end. So you could walk from car to car. And this became a cabin in Cannon Beach, and this was put on. This is not part of their running gear. When they abandoned the 2 cabins, this one stuck together. We brought it up here, put it on locomotive trucks so we could move it around. So it's a nice pattern. As far as I know, this is the only piece of running equipment of trolleys that was built in Oregon that's still in existence. This is a mate to that car with all the rod in it that's over on the other side. This is a Council Quest car, but on its original narrow gauge running gear. There were 10 of these, by the way, and the vintage trolleys that were bought later from the Gomeco company in 1990 carried on the numbering system, starting with 511. Anyhow, this car had a very neat brake system. Down right above the track is an electromagnetic brake. And that was because the line out of Burnside was like 12%, and that's pretty stiff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were afraid of using air brakes. Now, the way this worked was you have two controllers on the vestibule. The right one worked the motors, the left one worked the brakes. You turned off your motors now, you're coasting, and the motors are now acting as generators. And you open the switch on the left one, the current from the motors now went through that magnetic brake, put that down on the track, and acted as a brake shoe. Also put brake shoes on the wheels at the same time. Very, very clever.
That's pretty neat.
Oh yeah, at Westinghouse, at Earth John. So you can imagine the problem. Now, say you're going up grade, and you're on a 12% grade. When you stop to pick up somebody on that upgrade, you have to use a handbrake.
Okay, yeah, because they're not generating the power for
right. So now you got it on the handbrake. Now when you start, what do? You take that off, you're going to go backwards, see? So you keep the handbrake on, then you open the controller, and...
Release the...
It took a little bit of skill to do that. Take a look at the stool here. The stool was... You got a 12-hour day, and this is what you got to sit on.
Oh.
These guys must have been awful tough. Now, they also, but the company took pity. They put heaters on, so in the winter time, at least the motorman got some heat. Now, there were heaters under the seats, too. Problem is, it costs as much to heat the car as running.
Oh.
So I suspect that the rules for putting those heaters on were pretty stringent. Also, they could not use those electric magnetic brakes on the flat ground in Portland. They only could use it on the hill. Because if that caught in some complicated track work, it would tear everything out under the car.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a rule book especially for that. It specifically forbids the motorman using it on the flat.
Huh.
This is from LA. These big cars are 3'6" between the rails. We got it in pristine condition, but it rusted out. And the reason why it rusted out, I suspect, was because LA used some acid in the steam cleaner, and it got in through some minute pores. And we didn't do anything; it just rusted. You know, it wasn't even used; it was under a canopy. It's largely cosmetic. You could still operate the car this way.
How do you get them from Los Angeles to here?
Well, I came up on a flatbed,
Yeah.
and we transported all these cars by flatbed down here to the tune of, I think it was 47 grand cost us. This caboose was owned by Spokane, Portland, and Seattle. He also owned and operated Oregon Electric. If you go out the main gate and turn right, you go over a railroad. You ever done that? Okay, that used to be Oregon Electric Railway. And at one time you could get a sleeper car in Portland, get in a berth, and wake up in Eugene. Pretty nice. Problem was the schedule was only 4.5 to 5 hours, so that they padded it and let you sleep over in Albany or Salem. They didn't tell you which, but you wake up in the other city. This car is from Hong Kong. This was owned by Bill NATO. And Bill NATO was the man who was instrumental in getting rail back into Portland. He was going to have his own trolley line up in northwest Portland. And I'll tell you a little side story. I called Bill NATO because I needed a letter of support for Grant. And he called me back the next day and said, "What can I do for you?" I told him. and I got a letter, and I did get a grant. But when he called me back, was on his deathbed in the hospital. He had about 8 days to go, and he knew that his time was limited. And he called me to ask what he could do for me. That's a nice guy.
Wow.
So I asked his brother Sam for this after he died, and Sam gave it to us. Now Sam officiated at Bill's memorial service. And Sam said, well, let's see, we have a minister here, we have a priest, and we have a rabbi. Bill wasn't taking any chances. Every time I met him, he always had a smile on his face, always twinkling, gung-ho all the time, really neat guy.
Now he imported a couple from South America, didn't he, to get that thing going?
And he gave us one. And our then museum director said, oh, we didn't want it. And you know what happened? That son of a bitch sold it and pocketed the money.
Oh.
He's a great guy.
Well, we got rid of him. This was given to us, donated by the museum in Porto. And they call O Porto the Port. And they put these stanchions on in copies they made. They got the originals from Brill early in the century. I forget exactly what year. And then they started building copies in 1929. And when they did, they increased the size of the vestibules to get the stanchions in. You get 6 more on one end and 3 right back in the modem, so you get 9 more standees. In addition to every seat had a handle, and there were 3 or 4 more straps. So you could get about 50, 60 people in the darn car. And it's a small car.
So what happened to Brill?
Brill was taken over by American Car and Foundry, which was a subsidiary of Brill. And they extinguished the company name.
Oh, for it.
Yeah. Because Brill was the name of the founder, J.G. Brill.
Oh.
And there's a book out by one of the kids. It tells it. It's very interesting. Now this thing here is a trip gauge. See, if you fall down in front of the trolley and it's coming at you, don't worry. Not to be excited. If that hits you, that thing goes back and it pops this down on top of the track and it scoops you up. Well, you're gonna be a little bit battered and bruised, but you're not gonna be sliced in half by the trolley. And that finishes the tour. Now, if you